Welcome to the next episode of Ask Me Anything. This is a series of interviews with FinTech insiders. Our guest today is Koray Koska, CEO and founder of VitraCash, offering a smart debit card. Hello, Koray. How are you?
Hi, I'm good. Nice to meet you.
So I would like us to start from a personal question. Why and how did you switch from being a software developer to a startup co-founder?
So basically, my story begins in software development, just like you just said. And I was always in this space from the first day by really always working for startups and developing products which solve real world issues, which are really so connected to humans, so connected to solving something which is actually happening in the world, that I would say, and I would consider myself to be in the startup space since my first commercial job, something like that. Mm-hmm. The first one was actually for a US startup. They tried to automate dog walking, which is a real thing in the US. They wanted to connect people who can walk with your dog when you are working or whatever with people who have dogs, something like that. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so basically, I was always in this space. I saw what difference they make, and I always had this curiosity in my mind to change something myself, to build something myself. And this led me to a few ideas I had many years ago, and I tried different things. Some of them worked out a little bit, some didn't, and I learned a lot of things. And now here I am. It's really just like I was born into this space, and I was just never ever thinking about doing anything else. Even if I worked like in an employment, I worked for a startup. I always wanted to see the world from somewhere where you can actually solve a problem and not be like in the big enterprises, where I also got a couple of jobs, but it was just so different. They are so at such a high level that you don't really understand what you do, more or less. There are positions and job roles where the responsibilities are not clear. You do something where you don't really know how does it end up, who will use it, will it ever be used, and something like this. Whereas in startups, it's just completely different. You build something which is actually used, and you most of the time use it yourself as well. Mm-hmm. So this is something which I always loved, and that's the reason I'm building products myself. I want to use them myself. I want to experience the difference they make. So this is how I came to being a startup founder.
Thank you. Thank you. This is really interesting. And also in your LinkedIn bio note, you talk about the value of working on things that you are not an expert in. This is also an interesting approach. Can you illustrate it with an example from your own personal experience?
Yeah, so basically, I would say software engineers are really good at living what this quote means. As a software engineer, if you look from a higher level onto it, you are not an expert in the things you do. Never. You never develop software which is just software for being software. It's always software for solving a problem from a different space. Mm-hmm. So you build software for, I don't know, finance. You build software for accounting. You build software for whatever. There are so many things in the world, and everything is somehow solved by software. And this is what software engineers do all the time. And from my personal experience and from my background, something completely different than what I do right now. I just said I worked for big enterprises as well. One of the products was a risk assessment system. So basically what you can think about it is, it was a big oil and gas corporation, and they wanted to have a tool where they can calculate some risk scores for going into a country where there's war or, I don't know, some conflict, and calculating whether it's worth it to go there and dig for oil or whatever. So this was the software I built. And to be honest, I didn't have a clue what risk assessment is, or like risk calculations in general. And I think as a software engineer, it's most of the time like that. You have a problem which you never heard of, and you have to understand it deeply from inside before building something for it. A good software engineer always understands what he is building. And I just used this from my background as a software engineer, and I tried to apply it to my own products as well. I want to understand something from deep inside before actually building it. But the process of understanding it is something which I really like. This is something which was the most interesting part of being a software engineer. And this is why I wanted to continue exactly this. The most interesting part from my story in the past for everything I do in the future. And I really want to explore new things, to understand how they work, to understand how to use them. And then I want to solve it after I understood it.
Thank you.
Thanks. That's quite interesting. Okay, so let's then focus on your current product, VitraCash. So let's start maybe from the strategy that you have for this product. If you could tell us a little bit more about the target group, on which markets you want to launch the product, what is the actual value proposition? Yeah, so please tell us a little bit more about it.
Okay. I will start from how I got this idea, and this answers most of your questions, because like I said before, I always want to solve problems I have and I experience on my own, and I want to solve them in a way that I can actually have a solution for myself. So basically, this was also the beginning of VitraCash. I am traveling a lot. I am, by the way, currently in Bali. So since the pandemic started, I'm just in Southeast Asia. And what I experience when traveling is that the number of credit and debit cards, and also different payment methods like mobile payment systems. In the US, there's Cash App. In Southeast Asia, there's GoPay and Ovo and Shopee Pay, and like hundreds of different options. And those things just get more and more by time. So every year you get a couple of mobile payment systems, you get a couple of debit cards from abroad, a new credit card which offers you this great insurance, but you forget about it after a month or something like that. And my wallet just gets bigger and bigger. And it's not about the size. It even feels good if you have 10 cards, but the problem is you don't really know where to use them and what they offer, because keeping everything in mind is just very difficult, especially if it's just for payment at Starbucks where you pay £4 or whatever. You don't really think about, could I use this card just to spare 1 pence or whatever, or 2 pence? It just sums up by time. And what I experienced is when you are in front of the cashier and you have to pay, and it's your turn to choose how you want to pay. And he is even asking, how do you want to pay? First answer might be with debit card or credit card or whatever you say. The next thing you do normally is you take out your wallet, you choose the card you want to use, and you have just a couple of seconds. You have 1 or 2 seconds to choose it. And what I experienced is most of the time we choose the same card. Just in some situations, we have like in our mind this idea that this other card might be a better option because of whatever. But there are not many times like that. There are times if you spend a lot, like if you just spend so much that you actually think about it and you say, okay, what would be the best option. For me, it was this time a year ago, I was in Turkey, and I bought a new MacBook. And this was pretty expensive, so I thought about which card might be the best option. I had two options. I had the American Express with cashback, I think 0.5% cashback. And I had my Revolut card with best foreign exchange rate. And the question was, which one is better? I get cashback from American Express, but is it more than they surcharge my foreign exchange spending? And I had to calculate this, and it took me, I don't know, 20 minutes. And by this time, I was even an expert in doing those things. But it took me really some time, and I had to pay with my Amex in Turkey for something else. So I know the exchange rate because this was not public. So it was really difficult to get to the conclusion that in this case, Revolut was the better option. But if it was a week later, maybe the question and the answer would be different, because exchange rates change and everything changes, and we can't really keep track of everything. So this is how I got to this problem. And this is like the value proposition, like I said, to have a card which makes this thinking process, this selection process when you are in front of the cashier, and which automates it to help you choose better and to help you choose the right card you signed up for, get the benefits you signed up for, and automate a process which you really shouldn't think about in this new world, something like that. So basically, this is what I wanted to solve. I wanted to solve this issue of choosing the right card. And the reason was I had two options. The first one was just unsubscribe all the cards, all the debit and credit cards I have, which I rarely use. I thought about it a while, but then I said, but if I look through it, all of them offer me something I would actually want to use. I didn't sign up for them just because of fun. It was something in their value proposition which got me attracted to it. It was something I really liked, even if it's like my card here from Indonesia. I have it because I don't pay foreign exchange rates. Not even like there's a little bit on Revolut side, just like to cover their costs on some days, like Saturday and Sunday or public holidays or at night. And it's typically night when in Europe when it's daytime here. So basically, it's a good idea to have this local card. And now if I come back to Europe, I could just unsubscribe it and don't use it anymore. But if I go back to Indonesia at some time, it would be a good option to have it. So this was not really an option for me. I said I have to know which one to use, and I have to use those benefits because I sign up for them for a good reason. And that's where I came to this idea and to this conclusion that to have a card which automates this process, which I just can't keep in my head and can't keep track of, would be a great option, not just for me, but for everyone else who experiences this market increase of many debit card products, payment systems like mobile payments, and travelers who try to explore all of those options and to have many of those problems. And I would say this is also the main target group for us, people who travel a lot, or also people who live in a country and work in another country, which is also pretty common in Europe. So you have many people who actually live with two currencies. They have two currencies in their head. They have a salary in one currency, they pay in another currency. And they also most of the time have credit and debit cards from both countries. And to choose the right one in every situation is also in those cases not super easy. Like there might be a time where the foreign card would be a better option, even though there's a foreign exchange rate, but you get so much cash back for, let's say, exactly for the Apple Store that it would make sense. Keeping this in your head is not easy. And I think those two groups are the main audiences for us, people who live with two currencies or more, and people who travel a lot.
Thanks. so it's the next question is kind of a natural here, because the situation that you are describing, that there is kind of an automation behind the selection of a card that being used for a payment. It sounds like a kind of a magic, you know. So so how is this actually achieved, you know, in your product? If you can share this information with us, of course.
Yeah, of course, definitely. I'm one of our core vision elements is to have transparency, and this is also true for our algorithm. We don't want to say it's magic. We don't want people to believe that we do some magic for them. This is exactly what we don't want. But to be honest, this is what I hear a lot. This is also what I hear a lot about many other startup products. And the main point here is you always have to dig into it, and you have to understand how it works from inside to find the solution. And I think this is what I did in the past couple of months and years. What I came up with is a system which does two different things. So basically, I don't want to go into technical details, which doesn't really make sense. The main idea here is there are two big chunks of benefits and drawbacks you can get from credit and debit cards. The first one are things with a monetary value. Something like a foreign exchange rate can be good or bad. So you lose money or you don't lose money, something like this. The second one, sorry, it's still the first one, is cashback points, which are real money you get. So you either get cashback and then you pay less, or you don't get cashback and then you pay a little bit more, or like the normal price. So there are a couple of things which have this monetary value in it. And it's very easy to calculate with those things. So basically, you just have to know all the terms and conditions about the credit and debit cards. You have to know the foreign exchange rates, the cashback rates, and things like that. And then it's very easy to just calculate. This is something you could also do in your head, just like I did in Turkey, like I just told you before, for my MacBook. You just have to calculate. And that's it. Then you have like the solution, right? No, not really, because there's the second thing I just talked about. And the second thing is something which is very different to every single user. There are people who prefer some non-monetary benefits over just sparing a couple of pence or cents or whatever. So basically, people like to get loyalty points from some merchants. People like to get miles from their favorite airline. People like to get insurances if they fly or have a hotel abroad or whatever. So what we see here is a market where you have two things. The first one is the monetary option, and the second one is the non-monetary option. And the question is, how do you calculate with an insurance versus cashback? Mm-hmm. Is getting £10 cashback on an £800 flight better than having an insurance in place for a flight which is in a year? Because you might be sick, something might happen, and this insurance would cover you. So the question is, which one is better? And this is something where we developed a machine learning algorithm, an AI, which tries to replicate user behavior from past transactions, and also asks a couple of questions like, do you prefer having insurances, or are you not on the safe side? Do you say no risk, no fun? So questions like that. Mm-hmm. Or do you like getting the miles from your Miles and More card? Or do you prefer, or don't you even care? Maybe you just have the Miles and More card because of historic reasons, but you don't even collect the loyalty points anymore. So we ask a couple of those questions. And what we then try to do is to let both of those algorithms, the first one with cashback points, foreign exchange rates, and other monetary values, compete with the other one, the AI, which selects the card based on the user preference, like one wants insurance over everything else. And we try to let both of those algorithms compete and try to give us two options. And then we choose one of those. And by time, by learning from this user behavior, our AI just gets better than the first algorithm and chooses much better than the first algorithm. And the more you use our card, the better it gets.
Interesting. So we saw on your website that the product is not available yet. Yeah, it's like being developed right now. So if you could tell us, so what is the actual current state of product development? So, or what is at the same time, what is your kind of a tactic to go to the market with this product?
So one thing I just missed before was our launch market. I forgot to answer this question, so maybe it fits here. We want to launch in the EEA and in UK. So basically like Europe and UK. This is our first big market. And this is what we also said in our crowdfunding. Basically, from a development perspective, we are very close to a launch date. So basically we have the algorithm ready. We have our app ready with great designs and things like that. From a license perspective, to keep everything legal and to have all licenses to be able to actually issue cards and to send cards out, to make the KYC process in our app and things like that. This is the big chunk we are working on right now. And we have a plan to launch in summer this year. We said end of July. It might be a little bit later, but it's still, the aim is still end of July. And we are doing our best to actually have a launch end of July. But we will actually launch with just the investor group, the group of people who invested on our crowdfunding on Crowdcube. And with those people, we will try and see how the product is behaving, see how they like it. We will change a couple of things. We will fix some bugs. And then we will activate an invite-only system where those people can invite other people. And once we see that everything is going well and smooth, we will open it up to the public later this year. This is a date which I can't confirm right now, but it will be sometime in Q3, end of Q3, something like that.
Okay, thanks. So it seems like that, you know, in the context of your tactic to bring the product in the market, there is a lot of in this financial ecosystem that is actually driving, how this product is delivered to the market. So I would like to ask you, based on your experience with VitraCash, what, in your opinion, is the biggest challenge when it comes to launching new fintech product, especially on this market that you've already mentioned? Yeah,
great question. And my answer would have been completely different a year ago. For now, I would say it's definitely the regulations. And from what I see, the barrier of entry for fintechs is really, really high. Getting the knowledge you need is really hard. But even if you have the knowledge, getting all the licenses you need once you have the knowledge, which ones you need, is the hardest thing ever. It's like they make it very, very, they make the process very, very long, and they make it that you need really so much time to get the proper licenses, to get all the proper specifications. Whatever you do, you always end up in having like a launch date, which is maybe half a year if you're really fast. If you have all the knowledge ready, if you know all the suppliers, the third-party providers, if all of the development questions are already answered. So the only thing are just the regulations and getting you set up with AML policies, KYC policies, with compliance and whatever. It's a process of at least 6 months for someone who knows everything and has, I would say, unlimited budget. Mm-hmm. So this is really the biggest chunk in the fintech world. And I think this is the reason why so many good ideas need so much time to develop and need so much time to actually start offering a great deal. And I also think this is part of the reason why so many fintech products are still more expensive, or a little bit not just like the perfect product, what they could be, just because of this very, very high barrier of entry. And because of that, obviously, you don't have a big market of fintechs. It's just a very, very small market, to be honest, compared with software as a service companies or whatever. Mm-hmm. It's a very small market and there's not too much competition in it. And that's part of the reason why there are many, many options for great fintechs to evolve in the future. And I really believe that it's getting better. And yeah, I think once we have a state of regulations, which is just a little bit easier to get into, or once we have a company who helps with those questions, like a startup who helps other fintechs or things like that to get into this space and to overcome this barrier of entry. Once we got this, it will be much, much easier for new fintechs to evolve and for new great products to come to the market.
That's interesting. We recently were talking to one of the companies from the RegTech space, the company that is trying to help other financial institutions to to somehow jump over this barrier of regulations, which is not so easy. In this context, just a quick question. I'm quite curious. So how you guys in VitraCash, how you actually, solve this problem with regulations? Did you have some kind of a consultancy, or you just did it by yourselves? How it worked for you?
So basically, like I said before, our idea in the beginning, before we had any knowledge whatsoever, was to get into this space to get the knowledge we need. And this is what we did. And we found out what we need. This was the first step. Nobody helped us with that. We didn't have any consultants or whatever. We just contacted people we knew, contacted some companies who said, can help you with getting licenses. We didn't even know what those licenses are, to be honest, in the beginning. We just contacted them and found out everything we need. And after that, we actually had help from outside. We had some consultants for some compliance things, but sourcing all the suppliers we need to overcome some license issues was also mainly our work. So we really tried our best to don't have too much costs in the beginning, because those things are really expensive as well. Basically, I don't know what company you're talking to, but I'm very sure there will be some of those companies in the future, also bigger ones, who can actually help and solve those issues for you. But for now, from what I experienced, many of those companies are really expensive, and especially if you if you don't have a launched product or customers who pay for you, you don't have a big budget. It's always very tight, and you have to know what you're spending it on. And the more you can get done by yourself, the more budget you keep, obviously.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, naturally. But let's get back to your product. So you mentioned before that you are using AI for this kind of a prediction of what would be the best, or learning, like what is the actual user behavior when the user is selecting some cards for the payments. So just one additional question to this topic. I'm just quite curious. Are you using like some kind of already developed AI models or solutions, or it's fully built from scratch by your engineers?
We have engineers who are really good at that, and who developed the algorithm as well as the AI. We are using some open source libraries, mainly TensorFlow, which is an AI library from Google. The model was developed by us, and we also came up with what data we need and how we collect them, and things like that. So, for example, the questions we ask are completely from us, the data we get from it, and also, like you mentioned, the model which generates from this data we have the solution we need. Something like we have all those answers, and based on those answers and the cards the person owns, which one do we select? Something like this.
Okay, thanks. That's quite interesting.
Thank you. And one more question from me about the VitraCash roadmap. So what is the vision for your product in the long term? What VitraCash could be in a few years from now? And do you even think about this at this stage?
Yeah, so yes, we do. And we obviously, from the first day, had a bigger vision in mind without just wanting to solve one specific issue. In general, I would say our idea is to consolidate a fragmented finance market of many, many great products, beginning with payment methods like we do right now. There are so many fintechs, so many old banks, so many credit institutions and things like that. They have all those great products. They offer you great deals, but no one of them is perfect. And there are people who have 10 cards because of exactly this reason. And this is why we want to consolidate them into one great product, which tries to make you use all of those other great products which already exist. And this is also true for many other finance-related products. This is true for investing in stocks. This is true for so many things. And we see our future in having an application for people which helps them manage their finances and use all of those great products which are out there, especially new fintechs coming out, but also great offers from other older institutions and banking companies. So our idea and our vision is to help people get the transparency they need and also to automate tasks they can't really do on their own to manage all of their finances.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for sharing your vision. And this was our last question. It's been a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you very much for the questions. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Koray.